All right, so thank you so much. Members, you're welcome. Everyone is welcome to this session. Thank you so much for sparing your valuable time on a Wednesday afternoon to join this session. I want to say special thanks to my panelists, and I'm really happy to have the panelists on board. I will start with introductions as we wait for the chairperson to come and make opening remarks. I'm not going to go into details of introductions. I'm just going to be very brief because some of the information we already shared it on as we're sharing information for this meeting. People could have gone to various LinkedIn pages to know about the panelists. But let me start with Bettina. Bettina is our global director for professional standards and sustainability at the London office, and she also represents HLB in the. She'll explain it better, but in a committee within the International Federation of Accountants. That is the overall body that regulates the accountancy profession in the world. She also represents HLB in an organization called now. Yeah, so I was just mentioning that we're privileged to have a very, very big resource within our HLB network. Bettina Casgrain, who's based in London, but currently in France. But she's our head of assurance for HLB International, and also represents HLB in all the accounting forums. One of them is the International Federation of Accountants. That's the one which regulates the accountants profession around the world. And then also she represents us in Belgium, where there's another European body of accounting firms, where she's also the representative for HLB. Bettina, you're welcome, and you can say hi to the audience.
Hello, everyone. This is not my first time with this group, and I'm very, very pleased to be back. Very important topic, and really looking forward to exchanging views with you and hear what you have to say in your part of the world on the topic of AI.
Thank you very much. Most appreciated. We are really looking forward to you bringing international perspectives to the discussion. And then we also have Mr. Colin Babirukamu. Colin is the director IT at the Bank of Uganda. That's our central bank. Colin, you're welcome. I know you're just settling in the new place. You can tell us a little bit about how the seat is. I know you've just moved to Bank of Uganda. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, James. I'm actually happy to be here and to be a panelist on this very august panel with the speakers here, and of course with this audience. I'm looking forward to interaction. Indeed, it's possibly my third week now at the central bank. So just settling in, a lot to learn, a lot to understand, but I'm excited and I'm looking forward to serving the country. So looking forward to the conversation, James. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You're most welcome. Thank you. Thank you very much, Colin. I previously worked with Colin in Ministry of Finance. We're part of the team that implemented the integrated financial management system for government in Uganda. So I'm very happy to host you in this forum. Okay, and then we have Flavia Adong. Flavia, can you put on your camera if it can accept this time?
Hold up.
Yes, Flavia. As she comes on, Flavia is a senior auditor with the Office of the Auditor General. That is the supreme audit institution in Uganda. We are really privileged to have you here, and I'm happy that you'll be able to bring for us some perspectives from the public sector. Flavia, Can you greet the audience? Has your camera refused?
I've tried to apply for it to accept, but for now, I'll keep trying. But
Yes.
I hope my audio is on. Good afternoon, everyone. It's lovely to have you here. I'm very glad to be part of this engagement. It certainly is an interesting topic and quite hot, and probably it's the future. So it's nice to be, present when we are starting to have these conversations. I look forward to hearing from everyone, to learning from all of you, and also sharing what I have. I look forward to the engagement.
All right, thank you very much. Most appreciated, Flavia. You're welcome. And then I also have online Trevor Ariho, who's our new CEO at the League of East African Directors. Trevor, can you say hi to the audience and then tell me whether your boss, the chairperson of LEAD, is in the house?
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Nguyen. Thank you to the panelists who've agreed to come and share with us knowledge, and to the rest of the attendees who've made time to come and benefit from the wealth of knowledge that is yet to be shared. My chair was still held up somewhere in Nairobi, but she will be joining us shortly. Apologies from her. As and when she's able to join, of course, we'll allow for her to make her remarks. I thank everyone, and I look forward to a meaningful engagement. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. All right, so I think that gives me, I also have another resource who will give us perspectives from the academia. She's actually a PhD fellow at Makerere University, Esther. She will be on standby, and I will call her towards the end to give us some perspectives from what are the researchers saying. But for now, she can just say hello. Let me just enable her. Yes, Esther, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Yes.
It is such a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to the discussion and listening to you all.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Esther. She'll be giving us some perspectives from the academia, which I think will be very helpful to see to show us where AI is actually going. All right, so I think we can start. The chairperson can give the opening remarks later. So I just have to start this conversation. I think I'll start again with Bettina. The first thing I would like you to discuss in this panel today is what are the unique artificial intelligence related risks which are faced by boards in audit and risk committees?
That's a really great question. And when you answer that question, you can obviously go into the detail. Okay, you can go into the detail of things like, regulatory risks, compliance risks, data privacy. What about intellectual property? What happens if AI generates information that we rely on and it's incorrect? What about ethics? There are many, many questions. And we will certainly drill into the detail a little bit later on, but I think to set the scene, it's also important to understand, what is our committee structure? Risk committees, traditionally, historically, they're very much concerned with, the financial risks, the risks that companies generally encounter, and how can we make sure we are secure from a financial perspective. I think what we need to recognize is that nowadays we're in an era where there are two overarching risks in my mind, and they have to sit above everything else. One is climate-related risks. And I mean, in many parts of the world, we are very acutely impacted. Could be drought, could be flooding, it could be all sorts of things. And that will then trickle down into the financial aspects. And the second one is AI cybersecurity, which I will put together in a second bucket. I really see those two as the overarching risks, and everything else that we have been dealing with as risk committees, also as audit committees, historically sits underneath and can be impacted. So with that being said, we have to understand, how can we ensure that our board composition, our knowledge base at risk level reflects those new priority topics that we have to deal with. And I think before we deal with the detail, we really need to ask ourselves those questions. Do we have the right people on the boards? Maybe we need subcommittees? How do we make sure we have sufficient relevant knowledge? Not everybody needs to be an expert, but we need to be in a position where our committees, our boards have sufficient knowledge to understand, yes, there is a risk. Yes, we're impacted. How do we respond? Where do I find relevant resources that can be internal, that can be external, depending on an entity? So I think when we look into AI and, cyber risks, technology-related risks, if we want to call them that, we really have to look at a macro level and see, what do our committees and our boards actually look like? To me, that's the first step. What is the status quo? And that's very much where ESG, the G part of ESG, where that really links and has a common sort of ground with AI and technology and what we need to do. We can't hear you.
Sorry, I was muted. Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, so I was saying that thank you very much, Bettina, for setting the ground. And I think what I'm picking from the conversation, your discussion, is that there are basically two overarching risks. One is around, climate risks or ESG as such, and the other one is mainly around cybersecurity and things like that. So thank you so much for setting that. And I will now go to Colin. I would like you just to, from your experience, especially in sitting in boards here in Uganda, what are the two main risks that you can tell me, or what are the main risks that the boards should really be focusing on this part of the world? And also you can use a few minutes just to give us a general context about what you make of this topic that we're talking about today.
Okay, no, thank you. Thank you so much, James. And I believe it's been a great opener from Bettina also, and a great summary. Well, the first thing I want to say, I'll sort of turn the questions around and start with my general thoughts, and then I can go to some of the AI risks. Allow me to say, openly that AI is really not the future. AI is not coming. AI is actually here. It is clear and present. And I think we need to sort of get that clearly in context now, more than ever, that AI is no longer a future topic. It's no longer something we can begin to in a sense, anticipate that will be coming. I think it's going to be evolving and growing, but it's already here. And I think the earlier that every board is cognizant of its impact, I think the better. I believe strongly that, again, in Uganda, one of the key things that we need to, and almost all over the world, there are about 5 emerging technologies. Just my quick thoughts before I get to AI, and AI is the opener. And I like to sort of point to my 5 fingers, if you can see them, and the acronym is ABCCD. It's the 5 fingers of the future in terms of emerging technology. The first A is artificial intelligence. I think every board, every risk and audit committee, but I'll speak about the boards and overall, need to be now cognizant about the impact of AI on the board and the organization. The B is for blockchain. Blockchain is critical depending again on the industry, but it's now cutting across not just financial, supply chain, government and tax payments, public sector. The blockchain is the B that is really impacting just about every governance structure. And it's already here. I mean, it's applicable and it's useful. The other C Bettina talks clearly about is cybersecurity. I think any board that does not have clear cybersecurity strategies, I think will be in trouble now and in the future. The other fourth C is cloud computing. Again, another area for us to be aware of, because everything is going as a service now. You don't want to hold data centers now. Applications are running in the cloud, just like Teams right now. We're using a cloud application to be able to talk to one another. And then lastly is data science. So again, A, B, C, C, D is critical for us to, every board to sort of hinge themselves around the emerging technologies. Again, artificial intelligence, blockchain, cybersecurity, cloud computing, and data science. I thought that these are things that every board needs to sort of align themselves on. And I've been sitting on a number of boards. I've had to let go of a number of financial institution boards now that I've joined the central bank. But I have noted one thing about the boards that I sit on and the boards that I advise on sometimes, is that there is generally a lack of digital transformation experience. And I think Bettina did touch on that. The need for boards, risk and audit, not just the subcommittees, but the boards overall, to have a level of technical expertise within the board. And if there's nobody within the board, there needs to be either an advisor who can be seconded to the board, because the digital transformation now is almost foundational for just about any institution, right from NGOs to the public and private sector. And therefore, the traditional board has been disrupted, because everything that we're doing now is digitally driven. Risk identification, risk monitoring, audit analysis is really happening with tools. And these tools are now shifting towards AI. And therefore, that brings me to where AI is now. And I mean, many boards are now adopting AI for monitoring, for specific data analysis and output. And I think it's important, therefore, that every board is cognizant. In Uganda, particularly, I want to say our context, and possibly James, I'll share on this a bit later, so that I don't take up too much time whenever we have some time, is that we are really at the very early stages. And that's why we can still almost use the word AI is coming, AI is the future. It's really here, but for Uganda, I must say, in many ways, we have been left behind, even on regulation. And I worked with a regulator before I moved to central bank regulation. And I know that we are still playing catch up in many ways, like many countries. Globally, I think there's regulation that has begun to come to play in the EU, of course, in China. And now we've seen the African Union also come up with regulation. So Uganda is now in the process a strategy, policy, and an act. And all of these are really heavily in draft form. We've had task forces being put together, and the discussions are happening. So AI is moving way faster than regulation is catching up. I thought I should leave that here for the early stages, and I'm happy to come back to this. But my last point maybe is that some of the biggest AI risks that I see here, James, as you asked, is how much can we rely on AI now as boards? Can there be over-reliance on AI tools as a board? Decrease human judgment and oversight, because the more you use the tools, the more you realize the efficiencies and the ease of using these tools. And therefore, I can see generally an AI risk coming along with over-reliance of these tools. I have been to a board where board members, there's a particular board where I sat once, a very small, rather small board, but the members would infuse the financial documents into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT would share some decisions. But then now ChatGPT has very specific information of that organization, who takes responsibility for the privacy of the organization's financials and privacy of the information? So you're seeing an over-reliance on AI picking up. Some boards have not touched AI at all, but some are relying quite on AI. Another reliance, of course, is data privacy that I've hinted on right now. I mean, how much can we safeguard our employee data, our customer data when we're using AI systems? Then what about compliance and regulation? I think Benita also mentioned about that. You know, how can we make sure that the tools and the implementation that we're doing are also evolving with regulation? Because we might be out of compliance with the tools that we are actually using. And then I think lastly, I would say, who is accountable to the decisions that are taken by AI tools and by AI-driven decisions? Who will be accountable? A human being, a person, a board member to a decision. But now that we have AI tools, who will account to these decisions? So I think there's a general move towards AI in Uganda also. It's young, a lot of awareness needed. And I think the more we have such forums, I think this gets better, that we can talk about such a young, growing, but yet very, very important industry. My last remark is that I think finding the balance now between innovation and risk is going to be important for any board. Can you have risk audit and all the compliance mechanisms that don't stifle innovation, or can you have a lot of innovation that is not compliant? So finding a balance between innovation and risk is going to be an interesting discussion for every board. Thank you, James. I'm happy to share more as we go along.
Thank you very much, Director Colin, for that. I really appreciate that. Thank you for what you've shared with us. What remains in my brain mostly is the ABCC, the issues around artificial intelligence, blockchain, cloud computing, and data science and so forth that you've shared with us. I think this has really, enlightened everyone on this call. So I would like to put a pause a bit before I go to Flavia. I want to put a pause a bit and then ask our chairperson of the League of East African Directors. For those who may not know, I'm Dr. James Onyoin. I am managing partner at HLB Jim Roberts. We partner with the League of East African Directors to bring to you these quarterly webinars. And this is one of them. This is the one for our first quarter, if we call it for the calendar year. So we are privileged today, especially to have our chairperson, Gertrude, who has come to really make opening remarks and set the context for this discussion. So Gertrude, you're welcome to make remarks, and then we shall continue with the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Onyoin. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry for joining late. Believe it or not, there were technology-related issues. But it's really a pleasure to be here and to be part of this conversation. Just this morning, I had a meeting and we were talking about a technology. We're discussing with some people who are running a data and AI institute in Europe, and just talking about some of the things they want to do in Africa to equip especially the young people on how to deal with AI and data. And I just want to thank Bettina and Collins for the brilliant start to the conversation, already provoking us in different ways, because sometimes we get caught with one component of what's trending. And so today we're talking about AI risks. But what Colin is reminding us is that AI risks operate in a context. You can't talk about AI without talking about data. You can't talk about AI without talking about ethics and how all of those play together. Of course, many of us on the call probably know that one of the key responsibilities of a board is the governance of technology. But we also realize that the entire board cannot sit and govern technology to the extent and in the depth that is required. And so that's where the audit committee comes in, and the risk committees. They come in to assist the board to drill deep and really interrogate matters to do with the governance of technology. I don't want to go too much into what the panelists are going to say. Their profiles are brilliant, so I'm sure they are going to do a lot of things. But I thought I would just mention a few things that come to my mind. One is just how well we understand as board members what AI is all about. I think gone are the times when we should spend our development budget on just learning about what it means to be a director. You know, what are the roles, responsibilities, duties of directors? We need to upgrade that curriculum to reflect the emerging issues that we are dealing with. So if you know how to exercise the mandate of the board, but you don't know how to exercise that mandate with regard to technology, there are issues. So how do we upgrade our training and development curriculum in the boardrooms? I think the other issue is the tension between the opportunity that AI presents to do things better, faster, more efficiently, but also the imperative that the board has to ensure that the company continues to contribute to society through employment, job creation, and so on. How does a board balance those tensions? A shareholder who says, I want a huge return, and community that says, these are our children, we took them to school, we need to be able to employ them. So I hope that today we will also talk about how to navigate that tension. I think the other thing, and if you kind of assume, let's talk about a financial institution as an example, you have the board audit committee, which principally looks at controls and how the different lines of control come in. So how does the audit committee ensure that they leverage combined assurance to see how AI can be governed? You have your internal control functions. That's where we're going to be deploying technology to process transactions, to generate data, to generate reports. How does the board ensure that AI, I know a common word we use with AI is hallucinations. How do we ensure that the data that is coming out is data of integrity that gives a true picture of our enterprises, to the market? But then on the risk side as well is also balancing the ethical considerations. How do we ensure that we use AI ethically, whether it's to do with the data? How do we get data? How do we use other people's data? How do we avoid going beyond the limit of what's acceptable? But at the same time, also, there are topical issues around discrimination and so on. How do we ensure that we don't deal with those sorts of issues? Finally, because I'm just making opening remarks, questions about policy. The board is responsible for policy. How does the board discharge that responsibility as far as AI is concerned? Is it even possible to just say we have an AI policy, or it's a whole ecosystem of linked policies, whether it's the models that are used, whether it's the data that is used, whether it's the reporting that is done? How do you ensure that from a policy and governance perspective, the board does what it needs to do? So I'm very excited, Dr. Nyoin, thank you for your partnership with LEAD to continue the conversation, listening in. I hope we'll have a time to ask questions, because we all talk about AI, but we have varying understanding of how we can govern it. So if we can walk away having got 5 points or more on how we can be more effective in governing AI and, of course, technology as a whole, I think we'll be all the better off. So thank you very much. I'm looking forward to the discussion and to hearing all the insights that the participants will share. Thank you, and I hand it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. Most appreciated, and thank you for the partnership. And thank you for setting the context for this discussion. Thank you so much. And we shall certainly have time at the end for questions and answers. I believe that the last 1 hour should be for Q&A, or at least the last 30 minutes, if it extends, should be for question and answers. And also, just to share with you that my team at HLB Jim Roberts is already thinking. We've been doing a number of programs around how do you make your team productive. And one of the things we're adding into it is how do you make your team capable of using AI to improve their productivity, because productivity can be enhanced more by using AI. So we're coming up with some very practical use cases, which we shall be discussing with those who would like to take this discussion beyond the webinar. Thank you. So there's a lot of things in the cooking, but certainly there's a lot that we'll be discussing with the audience beyond the webinars. For those who'd like to go deeper to understand how can you make your workforce AI compliant or AI savvy. So those are the kind of questions that we want to be addressing going forward. And yes, so I would like to go now to Flavia Adong. Flavia, as I said, is from the Office of the Auditor General. She's a senior auditor in the public sector. So Flavia, what I would like you to do is just to, as we get introduced to the discussion, I would like you to share what is the situation like about AI in the public sector?
Thank you so much, Dr. James. Once again, I'll apologize. My camera has just decided that you will not see me today, but hopefully in another time we will be able to see each other. So just quickly sharing from the public sector, like Mr. Colin mentioned, AI is here to stay, and public service generally is looking at automating most of the services. Currently, it's not as automated as maybe the private sector, so to say. But last week, I saw the head of public service, Ms. Lucina Chove, talking about that going forward, the measurement of the performance of accounting officers in the public sector is going to be on the extent of automation of services. Okay, so clearly you can see that where we are going, we are really moving away from the manual environment and moving towards automation. And with that, in the area where, like rightly Mr. Colin has said, that AI is here, and therefore we are looking forward to taking advantage of the benefits that AI has to offer. Currently, we are not there yet, but it's a process and the conversation is ongoing, and I'm certain in the next few years you'll be able to see it. In the Office of the Auditor General in particular, the conversation has already started, because we interface with a lot of data, we interface with a lot of entities, and AI can help us to improve our efficiencies in the work we do. So we've last year we had a training session already on how to integrate AI in our audits. This year we had an interaction with the Swedish National Audit Office. We have had a collaborative partnership with them over the years in performance audits. So these could be impact audits, they could be value for money audits, which involve huge sets of data for you to be able to, to communicate to the stakeholders on different areas or subject matter. And one of the key things that came up was how we can integrate AI, but the basics still remain the same, that if you're integrating AI, what are the precautions you have to put in place? We have access, as the Office of the Auditor General, we have access to very sensitive information, a lot of information, but also sensitive information. So the question is, to what extent can you feed, let's say, information into, let's say, an AI application or tool? And so the conversation in-house has started on what policy can we have. Mr. Colin mentioned that oftentimes with technological advancements, technology moves way faster than the legal and regulatory framework. So it takes time for the laws to catch up, but it's very unfortunate that probably while you're waiting for the laws to catch up, you could be caught up. You may have made a wrong decision. You may have exposed, in our case, government to, to so much out there, data leakage, issues to do with data integrity, data tampering, data privacy. So we've started, and I'm certain in the next few years that the Auditor General would have had something substantive, at least on how we can use AI. But generally in the public service, it's a slow movement, but I'm certain we'll get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Flavia. Thank you so much for giving us that public sector context. We really appreciate that. And I'm happy to learn that there's some work going on. There's quite a lot of work going on in the public sector, especially in the Office of the Auditor General. It's the only way to go. You cannot afford, as public sector, to be left behind completely because we are all in the same ecosystem. So we have to move together. So I'm very happy to hear about what is currently happening. Yesterday, I was privileged to attend a breakfast organized by ACCA for HR partners, where Esther, who's here, was actually one of the facilitators. She was actually a speaker. And what we learned was that these days, you shouldn't be talking about, when you're advertising, you shouldn't be saying so and so should have, expertise in Microsoft applications, Word, Excel. What you should be asking is, do you have knowledge on how to prompt generative AI? What's your competence in using AI? Those are the things we should be asking for now, not whether you know how to use Word, whether you know how to use Excel. Those are already given. So I think for those who are in the HR space, as we recruit now, I think the interest should be, are you bringing in people who have that curiosity to learn about these new tools that are already available for us, for all of us in this market? Thank you. Okay, so I'd like to go back to Bettina again. Bettina, I know you've been in the space of corporate governance for quite a long time. I wanted just for you to share with the audience, how has AI changed the landscape within corporate governance?
Well, I just want to go back thinking about this. Thank you, James, to the chair's opening remarks, because it's very true that today we're talking about risks, but there are undoubtedly also many opportunities. And really, when you think about how the corporate governance scene has changed, how the corporate scene has changed, but also public sector, really how let's call it the work environment has changed for all of us. It's really seeing a lot of opportunities on the one hand, but then also a lot of potential risks on the other. And I think what has really changed, what has come to the forefront is, how can we manage the balance between the two, with everything that entails. I mean, we've seen when corporate governance or when AI first became a new topic, probably even just maybe after the COVID pandemic, the conversation started, and people were talking about ChatGPT. Should we allow it at work? Should we not allow it at work? There were some people who said, oh, this is amazing, let's just go for it, which was probably not the right answer. There were some people who said, absolutely not. We disallow everything because, we don't know exactly what's going to happen. There might be misuse. There might be things resulting from that usage that we cannot control or that we don't like in a corporate setting. Well, the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. And I think that is the sweet spot that, everybody being involved in corporate governance has to concern themselves with. And that's what we really need to think about. And if I can take an example from our own business, which is accounting, audit, what we are seeing and what we've been discussing in recent conversations with the International Federation of Accountants, with standard setters, is that unfortunately, let's say, prominent usage of machine learning tools, of AI, is gradually eroding the knowledge, especially our younger people have. Now, that is not something that is that we were looking for, but at the same time, we can see the benefit in saying we don't really need our amazing graduates we have in all countries. We don't need them to be ticking and bashing invoices the way it was when I first started, the way it was certainly when you first started in our profession. They could be doing something better because they have the capability, they have the education to do something that adds more value to our firms, to our clients. So what do we do to combine the two? And I think that is a very practical example where the board has and governance representatives in general have a role to play, to say, okay, how do we find that sweet spot? How do we find that balance where we can say, yes, we use AI, we use machine learning where it is appropriate. And I really want to put a focus on that where it is appropriate, because as as has been mentioned just previously, there's also the component of, being responsible for allowing people to have work, to being a steward in the community. So that means we're not just going to replace everybody by bots. So how do we use it? Where do we use it? How do we use it responsibly? And how, as humans, and that is also the responsibility of boards, of risk committees, how do I ensure in my respective entities that, especially my young people, they have a full skill set? I would call it a 360-degree skill set, which means you were saying, okay, let's ask, do they know about AI? And that's great. But what about everything else? What about the knowledge of the sector, the knowledge of the business, in our case, the knowledge of accounting, the knowledge of audit, the capacity to really think critically and assess whether the output that comes from AI is correct, needs to be amended, needs to be tweaked. And I think that is absolutely critical if longer term we want to avoid problems with privacy, problems with making the wrong conclusions simply because we're relying on AI. And not losing control as humans, I think in that conversation is very, very important. So there are plenty of little nuggets for you here that we can think about, how we can position ourselves, how boards, governance bodies can position themselves in order to find that ideal balance between the risks and the opportunities.
Thank you so much, Bettina, for sharing that. Looks like a very delicate ball to have in the air. Finding that sweet spot, as you say, is really the challenge for every board member, for every member of Audit and Risk Committee. So thank you so much for sharing that. And then I would like to go to Colin again. Colin, I remember before you assumed your current position, we had a problem at the Bank of Uganda. There were cybersecurity threats, which actually I think materialized, and the bank lost some money. And who knows, maybe some of this could be AI driven. They could have used AI to do a bit of these malpractices that allegedly took place. So I wanted to know, how can organizations, how can companies, for us who are in the private sector, protect themselves from AI-driven cyber threats. Because I'm told cybersecurity, when it is now AI-driven, is even more complex.
Yeah.
And has a lot of capabilities to even probably bypass some of the controls within the banking system. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks again, Dr. James. Yeah, again, of course, the comments I make here are purely, my personal opinions. So just to make a quick disclaimer. But yes, I think it's not just, the recent fraud, but I think globally there's quite a challenge. I think cybersecurity is a global challenge. And I think as we go more digital, we must almost embrace a wider threat landscape that is growing by the day. Even for you as a person, the more digital you get, the more exposed that I think we generally get as individuals. And so I think this is a clear and present danger, as I mentioned earlier, that every board now must be very cognizant to have cybersecurity frameworks that are in place. I know that many boards now are talking frameworks like ISO 27001, frameworks like the NIST, the National Information Security Framework that we use in Uganda. But these are all frameworks that help to sort of govern and oversee an entity's cybersecurity guidelines. But let me say this to you right now, that the same old model that we've always used to analyze a challenge in the digital world is basically, again, I keep using acronyms, but bear with me, they're rememberable. It's PPT. So PPT and the usual, it's sort of 101 in computer science class or any IT class. You learn that there's people, there are processes, and technology. People, processes, technology. So cybersecurity actually touches all the three areas. So does AI. And oftentimes we rush to think that the technology is the problem. And so we rush to harden the technology. And it's a good thing. Have all the firewalls in the world. For those of you who are technical, you have intrusion detection systems. I mean, I could talk about all these perimeter tools that you need to put in place to safeguard the organization. But many of the loopholes, I would say 80% of the loopholes, sit in the top P's. You've got people as some of the weakest links that you'll have in cybersecurity, and then you'll have processes. So every board, risk and audit committee, needs to think carefully about the PPT. Technology is great. There's a rush to really farm up the best firewalls. What about the people who are sitting inside the firewalls? Not outside, not the guy somewhere in Eastern Europe who's trying to get into your firewall, but there's somebody seated right next to you, the CEO, and is a young, unhappy IT guy who thinks it's an opportunity now to do something fraudulent. And how do you safeguard yourself from the same database administrators who have been assigned to safeguard the databases? And in summary, I'm giving you sort of a hint of actually what happened here in the recent frauds that you've had, without getting into detail, because it's really, it's people that know how to go around process and technology that really are the problem. So every committee, I believe, now must be alert to safeguard, around those areas. I want to say that, for instance, there's been a lot of discussion going on around, cyber defense systems. And it is true that you can actually have, every organization can actually employ cybersecurity tools that detect using AI and can actually mitigate potential threats in real time. So it's becoming more and more common now that organizations can deploy cybersecurity tools, AI-driven cybersecurity tools that can counter cybersecurity threats. And let me give you a quick scenario and why AI is very important for every board and for every CEO. AI is really here to stay, because AI is sort of the tool of choice now, and even in cybersecurity. AI is not like our ordinary worker, and I'm not advocating for machines versus people, but hear me out. I'm saying that AI does not go on leave. AI does not gossip in the corridors. I keep saying, AI does not have excuses when it rains, like it rained in Uganda today, in Kampala. AI is working 24/7. It doesn't sleep. It is proactive. As much as you give it to learn is as much as it will give back, and even more because of its ability to analyze. So cybersecurity driven tools now are really very helpful in detecting. They can detect anomalies in a transaction. For instance, auditors now would be very interested to know that if you deploy machine learning algorithms or tools, they can actually learn the patterns of transactions and detect anomalies proactively. It can detect them and even mitigate them. They don't just alert the IT administrators or the business owners. They actually go ahead to mitigate those potential threats in real time. And that's what is happening right now. So they are definitely, companies now can also employ AI against AI-driven cyber threats. And now we are seeing lots of a need for employee training. Another point that I want to make. I think the best starting point for every organization now is to go on an aggressive employee training strategy for AI, just to understand how AI-driven attacks happen, malware, cyber threats. And it's no longer just people, it's actually AI bots and AI tools that are doing this. They're efficient, they can sleep and lie low in your servers for a while, they can learn your patterns, learn when you're active, when you're inactive, and they can actually be deployed. But I think very vigorous AI training for our employees is extremely critical, as well as training for our board members and the management to understand. I think the last thing I want to say about companies protecting themselves, as you asked, from AI-driven, I think you mentioned cyber threats, is really the need now to get into data encryption and secure AI models. Basically ensuring that data used even by the AI that you've deployed is encrypted, and that the models themselves are protected from tampering. And this is a bit technical, but you can actually anonymize data when you're feeding AI with your data. Like I said, don't get your whole board pack and feed it to ChatGPT and ask it to analyze for you, because you might be a busy board member that has no time. You feed the whole board pack into ChatGPT. Indeed, it will give you results. But what you have done is that you have fed all the personalized data for your company into a global, open AI tool that is now public data. It's now a data set for others to reference. So imagine the data privacy, the exposure that you have actually done. So I think ethical use of these tools is also important. I think lastly, that I said is just making sure that there's encryption, there's training, there's actual robust cyber defense systems. I think that combination would help us to protect ourselves from AI-driven cybersecurity threats. But I just want to say lastly, and this is something that we always tell boards and tell CEOs, is that you can never guarantee 100% security or a risk-free environment, simply because the threat level is just growing by the second. We no longer have anti-malware and antiviruses that can cope with the cyber threats that are appearing every second. So it's a catch-up game. You can mitigate, you can reduce, but you cannot eliminate. And I think that's the same old game. Yeah. Thanks, James.
Thank you so much, Colin. Most appreciated, and I'm sure that organizations are listening, at least the leaders here who are in the boards. Training, very key, and a lot of those other measures that can be put in place to make sure you really make sure your environment is more secure. So I would like to go back to Flavia. In the public sector, how are you ensuring data privacy in this era of AI? How are you ensuring data privacy?
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. So I'll really speak about still the Office of the Auditor General. Like I mentioned earlier, we have I would say unlimited access to information for all the entities we audit and entities where government funding goes to. So you can imagine the amount of data that we have access to, whether it's classified or not classified. So definitely we have one of the core values is confidentiality, and this goes across with all auditors, whether you're in the public sector or the private sector, and I would imagine even with the boards, because the information that comes to you should be protected, okay? Some of these are business secrets, some of these are very key government decisions or activities. So as the Office of the Auditor General, we've had systems in place. So the documentation of our audit work, how we collect the data, how we store the data. You know, we have a system that we use, and it's licensed. So it takes me to the general rule that Mr. Colin was talking about on what are those key things you can do to ensure that data is protected. We are not allowed, so to say, to divulge information. But the loophole here is that with the coming on board of the use of, or the increased use of AI, because AI has been there, but I think most of us have now woken up to it. I mentioned that the conversation in-house is on what data can you feed into an AI platform. Because then what you do is, once you've fed the data, like Colin mentioned, it's not open, it's out there, it's for everyone. So we definitely have to go back to the confidentiality rules. You have to make sure that any data that you feed into an AI tool is acceptable for feeding. Colin mentioned encryption of data. You should be able to do that. Make it anonymous. It shouldn't be open for anyone to know that maybe this directly comes from this specific entity, and then they will know. So the confidentiality rule still applies. If you're not sure, you'd rather go the old-fashioned way, because like I mentioned, policies are not yet there, the laws are not yet. So it's a really gray area. So we would rather err on the side of caution. You'd rather go back to the basics of whether it's manual. If you're reading a document, read it. If you're not very comfortable with putting it out there. So we are guided by the confidentiality, but also we have IT policies in place that govern all the other aspects of data protection and data privacy. It's this specific area of AI that we are now looking into, but we're encouraged to be as cautious as possible. So where someone mentioned that I'm not clear. Mr. Mukama, is everyone getting me well? I'm okay. I see Mr. Colin raising his hand.
You're loud,
so
you're loud and clear. You're loud and
right,
clear.
so
Maybe his device.
Yeah, sorry.
You're loud and clear.
Okay. So we are guided by the general principles that govern the office, that have governed the office for a while. And till we have fully, taken into consideration all these risks and mitigations. And sometimes it might be a bit difficult going forward in the full adoption of AI, because it requires a lot of investment as well. Maybe Mr. Colin can guide, and Bettina, I don't know if you're very comfortable with this, on things like maybe licensing, such that you do not have to use open source AI platforms, that then you get into vendor agreements with a vendor that will provide you with an AI platform for you to use, such that then you can monitor, because this is what we're using for all the other systems that we run, okay? I would imagine you were there at the setup of IFMS, and the processes that you went through to ensure that the data that goes into the IFMS, because it holds government transactions, financial transactions, to ensure that that data is as safe as possible. So there will be challenges, I would imagine, in terms of what level investment do we need to ensure that we are comfortable with the extent to which we can use AI, and notwithstanding the privacy of the data that we hold. So we still really are following the old principles and being as cautious as possible. We are, that's why I told you we are not yet fully there, and we would rather take our time than make errors and expose government to attacks like you mentioned had happened in one of the government entities. So we are still really more old school than new school, but we're using it to the extent that if it's really public information, then you can go ahead. But if it's protected information that let's say I have particularly got from an entity that I am auditing, then the caution has to come in, because you wouldn't want to expose that you've signed a declaration of or an oath of secrecy and confidentiality. You wouldn't want to break that. So you would rather stick to the principles as we evolve. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Flavia. So I think what I'm hearing from you is that it is better to be cautious. These technologies can be good, they're very useful, they increase productivity, they make work lighter, but you have to be cautious about where will the information end. So before I move next, I wanted to go back to Colin again, because what I'm then seeing is that, like Flavia has mentioned, you may need heavy investments to be able to get licensed AI tools which can be monitored 24/7, and therefore ensuring that whatever you're feeding into the system is not being shared with the outside world. So to reach that level of sophistication might not be something very cheap. How can small and medium enterprises, leave alone government or big institutions, but a small and medium enterprise out there in the market, how can a board of that institution make sure that they can also use AI? What tools are available which are affordable, other than that heavy investment which may be required to pay for heavy licenses? What is available, Colin?
Yeah, thanks, James. For instance, it's critical to know that most of the solutions on the market today are really still open source, and therefore, you could just pay for small to medium to large. Actually, can still use these depending on the scale they want to go for. I mean, the very basic tools, for instance, that every individual must begin to use now, there's almost no way around it, is even just for individual adoption to AI, is that, for instance, in WhatsApp right now, I'm just sort of starting from the very basic, is that in WhatsApp now, your WhatsApp itself has a Meta AI tool, and you can ask just about any question, and it'd be good for you to test that. If you go to your AI search or your WhatsApp search space, you just in WhatsApp, just type something and ask AI to respond. And that gives you a very sense of what a free open tool can do. You'll be shocked by what it can actually do. Many organizations now are not ashamed or afraid, and I think they shouldn't be, of actually adopting ChatGPT and DeepSeek. All right, DeepSeek is D-E-E-P, DeepSeek, and available on the market. I think ChatGPT now is at 4.0 generation going forward, and these are really basic personal tools now that are used in education. The scientists are using them. People want to do image generation in the film industries. Everybody is using these open tools, and you'll be shocked. You can actually use this for audit analysis also, if you fed it with the right data sets. So I think my organizations you've got to be patient with the output of these tools because they're growing, they're young. Garbage in, garbage out, sort of, it felt like an abuse when we were younger, but it's actually a true computer science concept. It's really what you put in is what you expect to really get out. So most of these tools are learning. They are learning and they're getting better. And that's the beauty with IT tools, that they only get better with time. With more data, they're getting better. I think human beings begin to generate at some point, their age, while tools are actually getting brighter as they go with age because they're ingesting information. So you have tools right now, even in the industry, like Teammate, for instance, that's been used for a lot of times by auditors. Now they're incorporating AI within Teammate. And so you find that most of your tools that you use for risk analysis, every company is now going ahead to actually embed an AI tool with it, an AI add-on to it. And so I don't have many, real use cases I could share with you from a risk and audit perspective, but I just saw the latest output of what Teammate can do. And I believe the government uses Teammate, many financial institutions.
Hello, am I missing? Hello, have
Yeah,
we lost Colin?
I think we lost Colin.
Okay. I can give it a second, maybe we'll come back. Yes, I thought it was my network. Okay. All right, so I think Colin was explaining that there are tools available, but of course, as auditors, like Flavia said, we have to be cautious. I'll probably be very reluctant to put a client's information onto chat, GPT or any of those tools. I'll certainly be reluctant, but I can use it to do some simple tasks, but not client information. But the beauty is that, like he has said, for example, at HLB, we use Caseware as the audit software, and all these applications, they're actually putting in AI. That's a more secure environment. Yes, welcome back, Colin. Hello?
Sorry about that. Yeah. Was it just me?
Yes, you had jumped out a bit. Yes, you can come back. Yeah, you can continue.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry about that.
We lost you when you were talking about, Teammate, which you've seen being used in government and all that. Yes.
Yeah. So I think they are, and I wish I had thought through some quick analysis to share these tools, because I'm not an audit and board, a rather audit and risk practitioner. I would have sort of synthesized some of these tools out for actual use cases. But these tools are available, and like I said, Teammate now is available. But like I said, even the very, very, very basic open tools are not a bad idea to start with, because it's a very, very young space that we are growing into. Everybody's playing catch up. So don't expect very, very native tools, many tools on the market that have been based and built basically to provide AI and audit risk capabilities. It is mainly old tools now also that are being enhanced to bring on board AI capabilities. So most of the tools that you are using already as a board now have some capabilities. We even have now some latest board pack tools like Convene and Board Pack that have now embedded AI into them. And so you now have, as a board, AI-driven pack solutions. But I think what you're looking for now is actual audit solutions, actual risk management tools that use AI that I may not be able to share right away. But I think it's important to say that even open source tools are still sufficient. They don't have to be expensive. They are learning, and that's the thing about this. You've got to be patient with the outputs of most of these tools. DeepSeek is just most recent, extremely very buggy. The output is not very, very, very accurate, but all the things are learning. I suspect that the discussion we shall have around this time next year will be very different around the landscape of technology for audit and risk. So I think we're very early stages anywhere in the world right now in using the right tools, but I'll be happy to learn from anybody else who's using the same tools here. Thank you, James.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for highlighting that. Thank you for your contributions. And yes, it is a young space. We'll continue having these webinars. I'm sure by this time next year, we shall have a webinar and we shall be reviewing where we have reached at that time. All right, so I want to go back to Bettina. Bettina, earlier on you mentioned that there are ethical issues around this whole process of using AI and the AI risks that are coming out, which are really confronting the members of the audit and risk committees. So I wanted to get your idea. What are those ethical concerns? I would like you to tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, maybe we can come back to the audit example, because that's a very good one. But I think one of the main ethical concerns that we have is making proprietary data, client data, personal data available to the wider world, not only without authorization, but also without knowledge of a client or another third party. So that could be, that is one of the big ones. I agree that there are a lot of, systems available for free, ChatGPT being one of them. There are many others, depending on what you're looking for. We've also mentioned, if you want to, obviously, if somebody were to use something similar in a professional setting, it is fairly, I would say, easy to put some, some safeguards in place. What can we share? What can't we share? What cloud is it actually going to? Where is the information that we are putting out there into the open? Where is it being saved? Who is it being shared with? All of these things are there are topics that organizations, companies, also public sector, and therefore boards and governance representatives have to concern themselves with. But I mean, and I would say at the moment, what we're using in audit is, you mentioned caseware. There are more machine learning tools. I wouldn't call them AI as such, but we are still more in the machine learning stage, where we are saying, for example, if we take a simple test of checking invoices, something that a person, a human, something that I was doing 30 years ago in a day, now a tool, and there are many of them in the market, can do in a few minutes, which is obviously great. Now, once again, there are certain safeguards, because what that means using such a tool is that we are feeding the provider and the provider's system with information that doesn't belong to us, it belongs to our client. So I think it is best practice. It has been, acknowledged as best practice and a little bit developed in the audit profession internationally, and that's what we're talking about at the with the International Federation of Accountants, for example, to say, okay, discuss it with your client. Mention it in your engagement letter. Have a conversation very openly and very transparently about what does it mean? What does it entail? What are the risks? What safeguards do you have in place to mitigate those risks? Because we don't want to be scaremongering. We also don't want to be in a position where we hide things because we're too worried that our clients might not agree with us. I think one of the main, the key sort of areas where we really have to focus is transparency. And when you look at the European AI Act, which is fairly recent, that is one of the areas that are mentioned. Transparency, it's all about transparency. It's all about being very open. Same when we use, for example, let's say I wanted to create training maybe not just internally, but maybe also for my clients. I can, of course, get ideas from open source AI. I can then review it, and then it would be best practice to tell my audience that obviously it has not been solely created by AI, but that AI has been used in preparing that work. You know, so there quite a lot you can do in terms of best practice, in terms of being transparent, so that your stakeholders, your clients, any other stakeholder knows exactly how you're working, what you're doing, and there's no scaremongering going on, and there's no secrecy going on. What I would add is that when we go through those kind of, transparency concerns, ethical concerns, well, the auditor, for example, or any other organization, we are also at least partly responsible for what any subcontractors or our value chain is doing. Therefore, we really want to concern ourselves. Let's say we use an off-the-shelf software. It's not enough just to say, okay, the ball is in their court. It's not with me because I'm just using their software. It's really good practice, and I would say it's normal to be a little bit more inquisitive and to say, okay, in our organization, good governance looks like this. Where do you fit in? Do you have the same constraints in safeguards in place or not? If you don't, well, if you want to work with us, we need to discuss how we can improve together. So once again, it's all about conversation. It's all about transparency. And I think if we already focus on that part, we can get around a lot of the concerns that are of an ethical nature.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bettina, for those contributions. Yeah, I think, like you say, everything revolves around transparency, being honest, and being able to disclose where you have used this information, which third parties you've shared this information with, what could it be used for, what agreements you have in place to safeguard the confidentiality of that information. I think that's all important. Thank you. Now, Sylvia, I just wanted to ask you, sorry, Flavia, I just wanted to ask you, in the public sector and even in the private sector, because AI is affecting all of us, it has been said that sometimes AI, like Colin had said, if you feed garbage in, you get garbage out. So how can we make sure that AI does not make biased decisions? Because that's one of the problems that has been highlighted about AI. There have been cases and a lot of case studies around situations where AI had been fed with some information and you get different answers and probably not giving you the kind of outputs that you expect. How do you think this can be dealt with, or at least brought to a minimum risk?
Okay, this directly speaks to what Bettina talked about, that AI is just a tool, okay? At the end of the day, the human aspect still supersedes, okay? You're able to discern as a human being that the tool just replicates what you've instructed it to do. So one of the things we should do is you test these algorithms in a real life setting, because if you're fed an AI platform with certain information and prompted it to return for you an area you're interested in, are you able to test it, outside? So you're doing the verification, okay? Because away from that, you are not the only person feeding data into the AI platform. So it gives you a perspective from the different data sets that have been fed to it. So ultimately, the results you get may be already not necessarily manipulated, but not reflective of what you necessarily want. So you should be able to test these results, these algorithms, such that then you avoid biases. But also, we have to be very careful with the information we feed into the AI platform. Oftentimes, the biases come around because you fed the platform with half data. You've not given it the full picture. So like we said, it works with what you've given it, because you're training it, okay? It's relying on the information you're feeding it. So what information are we feeding into these AI tools? If you want a full picture, give the AI tool the full information, okay? And if you cannot feed into the AI tool the full information, then you should be able to verify off the AI tool using, you know, the real life situation testing of the algorithms. So for me, to reduce, not necessarily to avoid, but to reduce bias, we should be able to do those two things. Feed the tool as much data as you can, complete data. And where there are limitations, you should be able to verify. If not, you'll then make conclusions on inaccurate information. And if the information goes out into the public, sometimes then you have reputational risks. You create doubts, you know, and things like that. So to me, I think those two are very important. If either Bettina or Colin has something else to add on the same, I think it would maybe amplify the conversation, but I think those two are very, very key.
Thank you very much, Flavia. That's most appreciated. I would like to go back to Colin. You mentioned at some point that we're trying to play catch up in Uganda, at least.
Yeah.
You know, the technology is going very fast. We don't have any regulations in place. We don't have any guidelines. How soon do you think we should be able to see some good, you know, governance coming in terms of regulations, guidelines, or even the laws enacted to make sure that people using AI in Uganda have rules to follow?
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Dr. James. I think this is a critical question, and it's a national question. And I was participating in many ways leading this effort in my previous role. And I can safely say that we are not there yet, unfortunately. Just to comfort, I don't know if it's any comfort, but I think there's a general catch-up from an African perspective, global perspective. You have a few countries that really have acts already out. Uganda has the 4IR strategy, or the 4I, or the fourth industrial revolution strategy that's already in place, and that also accommodates artificial intelligence, blockchain. It accommodates robotics and that sort of emerging technology. But I think the way we are going now, you need to pull out AI now as a singular aspect that requires an act. Before an act, you must have a policy and, of course, a strategy. Now, the National IT Authority is working closely with the Ministry of ICT. There are a couple of stakeholders that have already come to place, some legal minds that have come to place, members from the academia that have already been put together. And I believe Ministry of ICT will now take this even a leap forward. We need to have that strategy out as soon as possible, a policy, and it will be easy to have a bill go to the parliament for an act. My roadmap projections that, you know, while I was in that role was, you know, 12 to about 15 months from, well, beginning of the year. So I would say mid next year, we should really see, because it's quite a process going all the way to an act. A strategy and policy would be fairly quicker, strategy much quicker, but I think the act and getting to the, you know, the full enacting of that National AI Act would possibly be in the realm of sometime mid next year. So I think there are discussions going on. We have the UN now involved. We also have The African Union now has shared some guidelines because they have also just come up with a framework. So even the African Union is just doing catch up with a framework. The EAC has begun bringing countries together, and some of my teams sat in those meetings to brainstorm where we are with the different EAC countries. So it's slight catch up for many people, but I would say Uganda is 12 to 15 months away. And that's not very, I'm sure, exciting news, but there's a lot to synthesize, a lot to put together, a lot to think about. There are too many unknowns in this space that need to be put together. We're almost learning on the go, both the government and the private sector. So I think, James, to answer you quickly, I would say roughly, 12 to 15 months. But like I said, we at least have the fourth industrial revolution strategy that's already approved and in place, and that can share some guidelines. We also have another law, which is the the Personal Protection and Privacy Act, and this is, I think, 2019. And this really works and comes in handy for personal data and privacy, because as you're doing AI, the ethical concern that Gertrude mentioned, and Benita, Flavia, and everybody has been clear about the ethical side of things, really comes in majorly around data privacy. How much privacy, how much safeguards can we have with, and the ethical usage of our personal data, especially for me as a data subject. And my data is out there at NIRA, at the passport office, the different places. And if AI is used there, how safe is my data? And that's why the act now on personal data protection and privacy is now available. So there's some frameworks that would get us moving, and that act mirrors the GDPR, the act that that is used in Europe, and around the data protection also. So there is some safeguards now that could be a good starter, but I think having an actual AI act, an actual AI policy that's very focused around its usage, but it must be balanced. And the biggest question now has been, who will take responsibility with AI decisions that are made? If you choose to use AI tools in your organization, who will take responsibility for these AI tools? Are we going to have jobs and roles that are automatically displaced because AI has now come into place? I mean, I can safely tell you jobs like data entry, audit analysis, your basic analysis tools now, or rather tasks, will be going away very soon. So what can we do also in terms of playing catch up? And the act will be covering a couple of facets around these critical conversations. So I think, to answer it shortly again, I would say 12 to 15 months, James, before we see clear AI governance and regulation in place in Uganda.
Thank you. Most appreciated. Thanks for sharing that. So I want to reserve, I still have questions, but I want to reserve the remaining 30 minutes for questions and answers from the floor. But before we go then, can I hear, is there any last comment that Bettina would like to make?
Well, last comments, I would really like to emphasize once more, and that comes back to what Collins just mentioned, also displacing people. There are a lot of opportunities. There are also a lot of risks. I think let's try and be balanced. Let's try and move forward, because you are very right. You said in your opening remarks, it's already here, it's not going away, and that's very true. Let's try and use AI and machine learning responsibly, and as a tool to elevate our human beings, our human staff, give them a new, more prominent role. Maybe they won't be doing data entry, maybe they won't be ticking, but maybe we can train them to do something that adds a lot more value to society, to us, to our organizations, to our clients. So I think that is really what we have to strive for: balance and using AI to become better as a society.
Thank you, Bettina, for that. Flavia, what would be your last word? I know I'll get back to you people, but I just want your last word at this point before we go into the open session.
Okay, I tend to agree so much with what Bettina said. While there is a lot of concern and even fear mongering about, AI is here and human beings are going to be done away with in some of these spaces, I think there is also a consensus that those that learn to use AI will be better placed than those that have shunned or shied away from it. So I would think that the earlier we embrace it and use it to enhance our skills, to enhance the work we do, then the better placed we are to compete, because human beings are still needed. The question is then now in the new space, do you fit or do you not fit? I do hope that we will all be found to be fit. So for me, last remarks are on that note.
Thank you very much, Flavia. All right, Colin, your last word for now, but I'll be coming back to you. Yes.
Yeah. I think Flavia said it very well, and Bettina, that we must embrace AI. I'm actually excited, I must say. I'm really excited about what AI can do for organizations, for boards, in terms of efficiency, in terms of opening up new insights into our data that could never have seen before, releasing some of these repetitive tasks now and reskilling our people to go to more strategic human-facing jobs. And I think that's the secret that we need to share with our people, that we don't even know where the job landscape is going. I think a Dell official recently said that Dell, the big tech company, he said that 85% of the jobs that we might see in the next 10 years are not even existing yet. Now that sounded a bit intriguing, a bit of, we have been used to, you must study accounting, you must study law, you must study engineering and computer science. And the studies are showing that the next 10 years, the landscape is completely going to change because of AI. And we don't even know what those jobs will be yet. So 85% of those roles, it sounded a bit aggressive. I'm hoping I can, find out a bit more. But I think the point is that Flavia said, human machine augmentation, or rather augmentation really means just, can you work with AI? If you can work with AI, you're getting ready for the future jobs. If you embrace AI as a board, you're getting ready for the future landscape of governance. Fighting it, I think, is no longer tenable. Trying to wrestle down and ignore AI is not exactly, I think, a wise strategy right now. But can you be aware? Can you train? Can you get AI professionals onto the board? Can you then augment and work with AI for the future of governance? I think that's where possibly the tricks lie. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Colin, for that last word before we go to the floor. I saw a question in the Q&A, but I think, Colin, you have already answered it. Josephine Olok was asking whether we have any guidelines, regulations, or frameworks that can be, that you could recommend to the board, audit and risk committees to use in AI governance. But I think you have already covered that. And you have said probably 15 months away from now, we'll have even probably an act, but there are already some frameworks in place. So I think that question has already been answered. I don't know whether I can see any other question. Let me go to the chat. I don't see many questions. Let me see. Somebody was just saying, Patrick was saying, AI is not really new, though the corporate world seems to have suddenly discovered it. I think it's giving the impression that we have been asleep, we have just woken up when the tool is already here. But it has been existing for quite some time. I think I can't agree more. Okay, I think that's what we had. So I want to go first. I promised you earlier that we have somebody from the academia. We have Esther on the call. Esther, can you give us some perspectives from the academia? What are the trends? What research is going on? How do you see Uganda coping up? What research are probably universities doing, especially in Uganda?
Okay. So I must say that the concept of AI is sort of changing each and every sector. And for us in academia, we have always been told that we are the last ones to come on board. But I also want to assure, everyone on this call that even in the academia, AI is becoming a big topic. AI, digital integration in e-learning, in governance is becoming a hot topic. And just to share a few facts from research that has come out so far is, for example, it's been found that over 64% of employees in the future are more likely to trust robots over humans. What does that mean for us as people here who are directors, who are board members, who are in the C-suite? Our people are not going to trust us as much. So that means our roles are going to have to evolve beyond us as board members, being the people giving the advice, giving the direction. What more can we do? We're probably going to now start to have a more supportive role to empower the organizations we lead to be able to make strategic decisions on their own without us hand-holding them. Previously, the role of boards and board members has been to handhold or to, be like that that bird that is looking over the organization and trying to check whether things are going wrong or right. But now we are going to have to support our staff and provide them with systems that can do these things for us. Then it's also been shown that when it comes to making strategic decisions, the best and most informed strategic decisions of the future are going to entail over 40% of intervention by machines and over 60% of intervention by human beings. That means that, yes, probably we have been using a bit of machines here and there, a bit of the technology that we know to make decisions, but in the future, it's going to even be more. That means we have to learn how to make use of these technologies that are available to us. In the finance area, cybersecurity, blockchain, AI, robotics, we as the people that sit in the C-suite, we as the board members, we also need to be aware and we need to know how these systems work, because at the end of the day, we steer the strategic direction. So if we sit back and we are only using 20% or 10% of these systems' capabilities, we are probably not making the best strategic decisions at the fastest pace. So it is up to us to get on board. And we've had all these conversations and Collins and Flavia and Bettina have shared different ways that we can apply AI in governance, AI in our boards. And you're probably sitting there and asking yourself, how do I begin? Where do I start from? And this I draw particularly from research I'm running myself around the factors, both psychological and individual and social, that affect the adoption of digital systems. Number one, we need to think about the systems. Let's choose systems with purpose and not popularity. Just because you're sitting on a board of Bank Y and Bank Y is using a certain AI system doesn't mean that that system will equally work in the same measure in another bank that you're a board to. We need to challenge our senior management. We need to challenge the rest of our board members to look beyond the excitement that the technology brings. Because very many times organizations and boards, you hear about blockchain today, then there's Web 3.0, then there's, robotics, today there's AI. And we are so excited to jump onto that technology bandwagon, to get the most expensive, most exciting system that is there. but it may not necessarily be relevant to the organization that you're leading. So understanding the why behind the system, starting small, making those small investments to understand at least one module or two modules in a system before you take on the entire system is very critical. Then the second aspect about adoption of digital systems, cybersecurity systems, blockchain, or AI is people. Systems without people do not work. At the end of the day, it is people that run the systems. Even AI and robots that are running on their own have been fed information by people. They are often upgraded by people. So the role of people, yes, there are certain roles that are probably going to become obsolete, but people are going to be very much needed, even in the face, even in a world where we're probably going to see robots as our co-workers. So we need to begin to understand our people. Beyond this system is able to probably identify fraud very quickly. How do people feel about this system? Do they feel it's intrusive? Do they feel that it's complicated or easy to use? Do they understand the value of the system? Chances are high that if people do not understand these aspects in the same right, they will not appreciate the value of the system. And that's why you find that in many cases, organizations end up spending billions of money on a certain system that's probably working and meeting a need, but it ends up not being adopted or being used 2 years later because the important aspect of the people who are the heartbeat of digital transformation were not catered to. Then the last aspect is change. When it comes to digital adoption of any system, but today we're focusing on AI, change, change, change. Let us not just implement, but manage the journey. And managing the journey means before we even roll out a system and integrate it into an organization, have we as the board, have we as the people in the C-suite ensured and taken checks that this system was very well tested? And there's a tendency to think if you have tested the system with senior management or the board, then the system is okay, you have really tested well. But that's not true. Testing means that each and every demographic in your organization is represented in the testing phase. From the age, the young, the middle age, the old, down to the different people in the organizations, the top management, to the person who cleans the office. If that person is going to be affected by this system, they have to test it and give their feedback, and we should improve. When we talk about change, it's also a continuous process. Like the way we are now, the ministry is now looking at revamping the different policies that are available. In that same way, we should think about the systems that we stand. If you are here and you are in an organization, and this I mentioned yesterday, that if you're in an organization that has been using a system for over 5 years and nothing has changed in that system, you're in big trouble. Because the way technology works is that it's constantly evolving. So even as you introduce the system successfully, what happens after? What happens 6 months down the road or a year down the road? Are there certain checks in your digital strategy that enable for this system to continuously be checked, to continuously be upgraded? Are there certain checks in your digital strategy that are also ensuring that that system that you are using is up to date with the current policies or frameworks or acts? Because like we have seen, policies and frameworks around digital technology are constantly evolving because technology evolves almost hourly, you could say. There's always something new that is being got. So that system that you're running, you should be able to have a check, and you as someone on the board be able to ask your ICT team, when was the last time you did an audit on this system? When was the last time it was upgraded? When was the last time its security protocols were looked into and improved? Then lastly, a few pointers to get us started. Experience is the best teacher. If you are on this call and you've never tried using ChatGPT or you do not know anything about AI, I challenge you to learn something about AI or learn a new AI tool or learn how to prompt ChatGPT today, each and every single day. And every single day you experience and practice with these systems, you'll get better at them. There are new insights that you will get. You'll even be more creative in being able to advise your organization the direction that it should go or what would be relevant and what may not be relevant to them. Then there's been a conversation about jobs, yes. Yes, without a doubt, there are jobs that are going to have to be, closed down because of AI. But in the same right, there are so many opportunities that are going to come. And if you ask me, in the industry, there's actually very, very few machine learning engineers, ideally people who are meant to build AI systems and test them and all these things. That's already a gap there. The other day I was looking through jobs, and there's jobs that they're now being called AI prompters. There's, data analytics. There are so many other opportunities that, yes, much as certain jobs are going to go away, there are also going to be new jobs that are coming in. So our role, again, as the board, is to anticipate, one, the new roles that we need to think about tomorrow, a year from now, 2 years from now. What are those new roles that are going to come about that have been powered by AI that we need to plan for in our strategies, in our finances? Then, as opposed to also, beginning to look at your employee sheet and seeing, okay, this is the next role I'm going to take out, or these are the people that I'm going to downsize. I encourage us to think about reskilling as opposed to replacing. If you have a secretary, and can you able to reskill them in using AI systems and probably evolve their role from writing reports to analyzing reports and making the work of the CEO or you as a board member much easier. Then training, and training should not just cut across only the organization or the employees, but even us as board members. We cannot lead what we do not know. And this theory cuts across everything in life. The better you know, the more experience that you know, the better you are in position to give advice and to lead better. So as board members, as staff, as our organization, let us push for training of these tools. And I know a lot of us now know how to prompt ChatGPT, but prompting AI is also a powerful skill in itself. You'll find that you give two people the same question, and the way they will come up with the answers, both using AI, will be completely different. Prompting is a powerful skill that, while it may seem obvious, you just go to Google and put in whatever you're looking for, but prompting is very powerful. In the way you prompt, it's the way you get the results that you want. And like Colin said, garbage in, garbage out. So the better you are at prompting, the better the results that you get. Data literacy, data analytics, ethical use of AI, tomorrow we are going to have to now invest a lot more in teaching the next generation, which is Generation Alpha, how to use AI in the right way. Because if it's not used in the right way, it affects everything. We'll get issues of miscommunication, fraud, and even, deaths, and so many terrible things that could happen if we do not use AI the right way. Then encouraging creativity. And I want to challenge you, if you're on this call, take at least 2 hours away from your gadgets. 2 hours, that's one practice to start making, so that you're not in this cycle where you cannot live without your smartphone. And right now we are getting anxiety because of not being able to access the smartphone. Now imagine what it would be like if you get anxiety because you cannot access an AI tool to think for you. We will have ended in humanity. We will not use our brains, yet in fact our brains are sharpened and made better when we keep using them. But if we constantly rely on AI and not encourage creativity, or not intentionally as individuals take breaks and force our minds to think, we are going to get to a point where 10 years, 5 years from now, we will have people who cannot think. And if the internet is not there, If your smart gadget is not there, you cannot do any work. Then lastly,
thank you.
anticipating change. Let us anticipate change. Let us plan for it to be able to better guide our institutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Esther Batuzo from the academia, Makerere University. We really appreciate your comments and the additions to the discussion. So you can see we are going to get to a point where, do you know that these days people cannot even multiply 15 by 16? They have to run for a calculator. Now, it's going to get worse if we get so dependent on the AI that we cannot even think. We shall have people working without brains, or with brains but which don't work. This is a very risky thing, so we have to be cautious about this thing. Thank you so much, Esther, for that caution, and I'm sure this is a conversation we're all going to take to our children to tell them that it's good to Google everything, it's good to deep seek everything, it's good to GPT everything, but also think. Take a moment to think and reflect. Thank you very much. So members, I think we are running out of time, and I need to give this in a few minutes to the CEO to give us some closing remarks and the next steps and way forward as far as the programs that are coming between either LEAD and HLB Jim Roberts as partners or within LEAD itself. I want to reserve a few minutes to do that. There were some questions, but good enough. Most of them had already been answered. But there's one, Bettina, you need to answer in just 1 minute. How will organizations communicate AI initiatives to stakeholders? Its impact on reported financial information and company performance? How it is in the chat.
I think the part of general communication. What do we do? How do we use the information? How do we use proprietary information? All of that is fairly easy. We can communicate in our engagement letters in our profession, for example. We can talk to our supply chain, our clients, our suppliers. We can talk with our banking community, with our community, stakeholder community in general. That is fairly easy to do once we have policies in place. It doesn't mean policies have to be perfect. It just means, we have to make a start. And we have to try and demonstrate ethical behavior. Now, how can we monetize, how do we transform the impact? How do we measure the impact? I think that will only become apparent, the longer term. That is a little bit, in my firm in France, we were asking ourselves 10 or 15 years ago, if we go on Facebook or if we go on LinkedIn, what will the impact be on new client acquisitions in monetary terms? That is fairly difficult to do for the moment. But I think, one thing we can definitely do is transparency and communication about where we're at now, where do we hope to go, how do we get there, what safeguards do we put in place, and just keeping our stakeholders up to date with what we are doing.
Thank you. So maybe, Bettina, the message I'll give to you as you go back to the International Federation of Accountants, we need a very clear standard on AI use. Accounting standard. Okay, thank you. All right, so I would like to leave these 4 minutes for the CEO lead to make some announcements. I'm sure he has some announcements and some upcoming activities before we close the webinar. Over to you, Trevor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nyoin. First, I would like to greatly appreciate our panelists and whoever has taken part in our webinar session. Thank you very much, quite informative. It speaks to the reason that LEAD exists. We exist, one, to foster learning, to foster the engagement, and of course, to foster networking. And this afternoon session speaks to the pillar on learning. And of course, under learning, we've launched or relaunched our webinar sessions this evening, and I would like to thank our partner HLB, Jim Roberts, who's committed to ensuring that we have monthly or quarterly sessions in line with topics that are driving the agenda in the boardrooms today, not yesterday, but today. So thank you very much, HLB Jim Roberts. This afternoon, we've learned that the future belongs to organizations that can skillfully navigate AI's complexities. From what our panelists did share with us, it's clear that understanding AI's risks while leveraging the immense opportunities and potential that it has can only drive the discussions in the boardrooms to greater heights. Therefore, our role as leaders in boardrooms and leaders in businesses in which we operate is not to fear AI, but to understand how it integrates in the grand scheme of things. So I thank you very much, each and every one of you, for enabling us address our pillar on learning. And in furthering our learning pillar, of course, like I said, we've relaunched our webinars. In the coming weeks, we intend to relaunch our podcast series, and I will be reaching out to quite a number of subject matter experts to come and be part of our podcast series, which we'll be relaunching. We also have our lead convention coming up in July, and we shall be putting out a call to, subject matter experts such as you to come and enhance the excellent learning that can be gotten through the boardrooms, trickling down to our managers and then impacting the businesses that we all lead. That said, we've got quite a number of strategic partnership initiatives that we are driving at. I was glad to hear Collins highlight the Dell research that speaks to the fact that 85% of the jobs in the future are not yet known. What does that mean for the boards of the future? For example, if the jobs are not yet known, what does it mean for the boards of the future? And that research, if I remember correctly, Collins was in collaboration with the Institute of the Future, an organization that we seek to collaborate with in terms of enhancing our knowledge and learning capabilities at LEAD. So we call upon all business leaders to heed our calls from time to time, be it in joining our webinars, in organizing some of our webinars. I know that the coming webinar will be on a topic equally as exciting, which is ESG, the place of ESG and the boards and how we interact with that. And I will be sharing the details with each one of us and how we can engage in the conversation. Keep the conversation going. Thank you very much, Dr. Nguyen and the panelists. I'll yield my time back to you in case there's a question, a burning question that needs to be answered in the next 1 minute. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I think you're mute. Dr. Nguyen.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying thank you very much, Trevor. Thank you for also unveiling to us what is coming, the podcasts. We're looking forward. The podcasts are really nice. I've watched them and I love them. The lead convention is an event not to miss in July and the months to come. Thank you very much. I want to take this opportunity again to thank our chair, Gertrude, for the opening remarks she made and setting the context. I want to thank all the panelists for your various contributions. I want to thank our colleague from the academia, Esther Batuzo, for giving us some perspectives from the academia. Thank you to our CEO of LEAD, Trevor Ariho. Thank you so much for the collaboration that we've gone through to put this together. And also my team here at HLB Jim Roberts, people who are behind the scenes, especially the technology people. I want to thank you for this very good platform. I want to thank the team at LEAD and everyone. Until we meet again, let's continue with the conversations. Of course, we have so many other forums on which we continue with the conversations in our various clusters within LEAD. Let's continue talking about these things. And as I said, we also have some specialized programs on how to improve productivity, and it's going to be leveraging artificial intelligence and how you can use these tools. So for those who are interested, you can get in touch with us at HLB Jim Roberts. We'll be able to take you through some of these tools which can sharpen your soul, as Stephen Covey said in his book. Thank you very much, and bye-bye. All right, thank you. It has been a nice 2 hours, well spent with you. I wish you all the best. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.